This is our August 8th regular board meeting, the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District. The boardroom is obviously open. We also are doing this thing on Zoom right now. We're reconvening the open session. It's 19:05, and we're coming in from our closed session. We started there at 6 p.m. Be advised, these meetings are televised. They're on Channel 28. The great Tri-Valley TV does that for us, and they do them on Wednesday and Saturday evenings, Monday, Friday, and Saturday mornings. We're going to begin this meeting, public meeting, with a Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask our board member, trustee, Stephen Druin, who's recently back in our country, to lead. he was on holiday. If he'd lead us, please.
Please state your. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Again, we're coming back into open session. Any actions we take in closed session, we report out. So I'll ask our clerk, Trustee Prusso, if there's any actions, and if so, if you'd report those.
Well, we have no actions to report.
Thank you very much. Some house cleaning things, just housekeeping things. Exits are in the back, and there's one on the side as well as the thing. During the meeting, if anyone has to use any of the restroom facilities that are across the lobby. This is an open session. This is our regular meeting of the Board of Education. Our primary focus here is on the education of the kids that live within the jurisdiction of this public agency. And during our meeting, our members of the public, you, will have the opportunity to share information, voice your ideas, share concerns, things like that, with regards to this public agency. During our discussion on each agenda item, there'll be a time for you to have the opportunity to speak that item. If there's an item that's not on our agenda, there's also an opportunity for that. And we ask you for the non-agendized items to fill out a tan card, and for the agendized items to fill out a blue card. And sometimes we have to look and see if the number's right, and I might ask you to clarify it so we call you up at the right time. In either of those instances, a clock will start, and you'll look at it's 3 minutes. And we ask that when you get started, I'll make sure that the microphone's on, that we can hear you. We want to capture the audio and the video for the production reasons, and so that we can hear what you're saying. We have a really good history of folks being very polite and cordial, because we really want to be able to be heard. So if the folks in the audience agree with, just simply put your hand up and we can tell that there's kind of consensus in the room. And we know this is a very small sampling of the 100,000 people that live here, or the people that have kids, 13,000 kids in our district. But it's still nice to know the folks that are in the audience, kind of how you're thinking, or if you want to put your hand up, that's fine. But we ask that speakers refrain from speaking to the audience, and audience refrain from speaking to the speaker. Address the board when you come on up. In either instance, it's 3 minutes. A timer will come up to remind you. I think sometimes these screens on the side, when they hit about 30 seconds, they'll come up. We ask you to wrap up politely at the 3-minute mark. Speak once on the topic. And the reminder that these are televised. Again, that's Channel 28 Wednesday and Saturday evenings. It's at 7 p.m. and on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. Friday and Saturday mornings at 0900. Moving into Section 4, I'd ask our superintendent, Mr. Chris Van Schack, if there's any changes to the agenda tonight.
Mr. President, there are no changes this evening.
All righty. We can move right into 5-1, our recognitions.
Fantastic. Please. It's great to start the year by introducing folks who are new to our administrative team or who have recently been promoted. So I'll invite those folks forward at this point, if I could. An impressive squad. I'll start with Garrett Fitch. Garrett, put your hand up. Garrett is a new vice principal at Mendenhall. He is a Bay Area native, having attended schools in San Ramon. Recently, his career has been in San Ramon, and we are thrilled to have him here. He is a Livermore resident as we speak. His wife and 2 children are in our schools, and so he's going to be a huge value added to Mendenhall. So Garrett, welcome. Lisa Keck is the new vice principal at Livermore High School. Hi, Lisa. Lisa is has spent time in both New York and in California as an educator. She's 29 years in, I believe. Has had experience at a number of different levels, and she's going to be great value added to the person to her left, and we're thrilled to have her at Livermore High School. The third new person to the team is Lauren Schifrin. Lauren is joining us. She's been in education 10 years. She has also worked out of state in Chicago, I believe, and most recently Morgan Hill Unified School District. And again, she's going to be taking the spot of another person who's standing up here in, at Junction TK8. So those are our three new faces to the team. We're thrilled to have them. We're also thrilled to report that we've been able to retain a large percentage of our administrators, 95.5% in fact. So we expect you to be joining the administrative family here and to be here for a long period of time. Our promotions, I'll start with Danielle Mackey. Danielle is over to the far right. She will be the new principal at Joe Mitchell International Baccalaureate School. Danielle has been 20 years? 20 years? Yeah. You're right. Well, she's been at Maryland. She's been at Joe Mitchell. Extremely talented leader, educator. She's going to do a great job for us over at Joe Mitchell. And again, thrilled to see her move up into that spot. 2 spots to her left, Miss Roxana Mohammed. And Roxana has been with us. I think we took her from New Haven about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. Yeah, so it's been about a decade since we stole her from New Haven. She's been in education 30-ish years. Yeah, an impressive number, no doubt. But she will be taking the helm at Livermore High School. And again, a well-deserved promotion, and I know she's going to do amazing things at LHS. Our third promotion is Michelle Cycling. Michelle is to the left there. She's been an elementary and middle school teacher. She was also an important component to our Unite team, and so she's got a really strong background in technology, but a very, very skilled educator, and she is going to add her experience, her expertise, and her creative thoughts to Vineyard. We have 2 people with us today who actually are new-ish administrators. They came to us midway through last year, and so again, I'd like to either introduce or reintroduce. To the far left is Doug Demore. Doug is our Director of Fiscal Services, and he has been in education fiscal services for 22, 3-ish, 4, something like that. So a long time. He was most recently at the county. Before that, he worked in San Leandro and in Emory, and brings a wealth of experience in the area of finance. And I know Teresa, absolutely thrilled to have him on her team. And Holly Barker. And Holly Barker is going to take on a major role at Maryland Avenue as the program coordinator for our new Maryland Avenue STEAM program. And again, she's been in our district, been in education maybe 18 years-ish, something like that. Yeah. So again, I think the point is some very, very experienced, creative, innovative leaders, both joining and moving up in our ranks. And so I just want to introduce them, welcome them, and wish them the best in the coming year. And I know that the board is excited to be able to shake your hands and meet you in person. So congratulations, and thank you for being here this evening. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Christy, we're good. Go slide in. We're gonna get some little stools here. Yeah. Christy can stand on the stool.
Okay, we'll peek in the window.
Girls volleyball. There's no one better at it.
Thank you.
What's that? Yeah. No, not hazing, initiation. Okay, our student board members from our 2 comprehensive high schools aren't with us during the summer months. They'll be coming soon. This is our last summer meeting. And so we're going to go to 7, which is Employee Association reports. And this is an opportunity for the leadership teams of our bargaining groups, our employees, 1,500 of them, to come and let us know what's going on within their respective locals. We have Livermore Education Association. Amy Thompson is our president, coming on up. Good evening. You are on.
I am on. Good evening. We're back. Good evening, Board President Bueno, Superintendent Van Schack, members of the board and cabinet. I'm Amy Thompson, president of the Livermore Education Association, representing teachers, nurses, psychologists, speech pathologists, and teachers on special assignment. I hope that everyone had a wonderful summer. I know Stephen did. This year, what I'm looking forward to is continuing to build relationships and working together to make Livermore the best place for students. Teachers have already begun this process. They've started their keen-in trainings to learn of updated policies and procedures. Tomorrow, teacher leaders from every school site will come together for the ILT Leadership Institute. Next Monday, we have the new hire orientation event where we will welcome more than 60 new teachers to our district. And while we still have a few positions to fill, we are in much better shape than we were last year. Thursday, August 17th will be the kickoff celebration, followed by a professional development day, and Friday, teachers will spend the day preparing the classroom for new incoming students. All of this preparation is leading up to August 21st, the first day of school, the reason that we're here, for our students. And I just want to take a minute to say thank you to this board for coming back over and over and over again, for reading through all of the board documents and being prepared and making decisions that are in the best interest of all of the students in our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also here is Eileen Greenlee, who's the VP of LEA, and then CSEA, California State Employee Association, is Stephanie Wagner. She's not here. And Kirsty Governor is SEIU's leadership, and Lily Lopez for the confidentials. So we're going to go into section 8, which is communication from the public. And communication from the public is the time for you, our public, to comment either in writing or verbally on any item that is not on the agenda. These are those tan cards. Now, we, the board, may listen to the comments, and following, we may ask staff some clarifying questions, but we can neither discuss nor take action at this meeting, and this is all in accordance with the Brown Act. So those who have filled out tan cards, I'll give you a call up, and again, the 3-minute, and we really want to hear what you have to say. So we'd ask folks that might agree, and if you have 2 people want to say the same thing, or someone already says there's no need, you can just say, listen, they already said what I was going to say. So we ask that you follow the 30-second timer towards the end of it. So with that being said, I'll start out with Janie Dobbs. On deck is Marilyn Dykstra. And you have to hit the button, and it's off. It's on. There you go.
I wrote it down, so I'm just going to read it.
Thank you.
Because I always get nervous in front of a group. Good evening, esteemed Board of Education trustees. I want to thank you for your community service and providing leadership as advocates for children, for the school district and public schools. You are authorized by voters to work together as a team to set policy and make decisions that fulfill an obligation under California law to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for all students, and to prohibit discrimination and harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender, ethnic group identification, race, ancestry, physical or
origin, religion, color, or mental or physical disability. I am a retired public school elementary teacher of 34 years, and I am here this evening to voice my concern about the upsurge in anti-LGBTQ plus hate across our nation and right here in this very room. LGBTQ plus youth are facing increased marginalization and stigmatization. Based on a recent national survey on mental health, 60% of LGBTQ youth experience discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. 67% of this youth reported that someone tried to convince them to change their sexual orientation or gender identity because it wasn't okay for who they were. Discriminatory harassment is causing a truly devastating impact. 41% of LGBTQ plus teens within the United States have seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, and 14%, that's 1 in 7, have actually made an attempt. The most significant way we can prevent hate and support our LGBTQ plus community is to speak up. We must teach children and adults about the importance of celebrating diversity and appreciating differences. Our youth deserve to feel safe no matter where they are. Our public schools must always ensure a safe and inclusive environment for all students and staff.
20 seconds.
In our schools, there is no room for racism. In our schools, there is no room for homophobia. In our schools, there is no room for hate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marilyn Dykstra, followed by Sherry Spain.
Good evening. Whoops, can you hear me now?
Speak
All
in.
right, good evening, President, Superintendent, and members of the board. I thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening. I come here as a member of Moms Demand Action because we are not just for gun sense laws, but we are for disarming hate. I thank you for your continued support of LGBTQ plus students and faculty, and I ask you to continue with that. Moms for Liberty, I don't have to have someone tell me that they are a hate group. They are by definition because they are anti-LGBTQ. They have also been recognized by the Southern Poverty Law Center, who tracks hate groups and has for many years, as a hate group. They are not only anti-LGBTQ plus, they are anti-Black, anti-BIPOC. They are anti, dare I say, school district. They're anti-CDE. They are anti the Department of Education, and they are anti-government. This is according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. They are not for liberty, they are the opposite. So we said here when we open, with liberty and justice for all, and I ask you to continue to support that all and disarm hate. Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is Sherry Spain, followed by Cynthia Shawn.
Good evening.
Evening.
Speaking as a Moms Demand Action mother, a resident, an immigrant, and a mother of an LGBTQ plus child. I came from a country which was much like the US. I was born in Iran. We had many freedoms. We dressed the same. We acted the same. But in 1979, we had a revolution. And the government decided we needed more religion and we needed more rights taken away to be a better society. As with everything, it started small, but slowly they chipped away the rights of the people. It started with the education, the way the women dressed, where they were allowed to go, what they were allowed to do. As you know, we all have to wear the hijab now in Iran. We escaped, and I was so grateful to come to a country of freedom with my family, and my kids were all born here. It always starts small, and my fear is those little increments, changing away what books we read, what we're allowed to teach, what we're not allowed to teach, is how it always begins. Before we know it, we've lost much of our freedoms. And as a mom, this is very concerning to me. My only statement really is, do not let the loss of liberties and the rewriting of history and religious influences change our freedoms and our values here and for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cynthia Shaw, followed by Ron Carell Beichner.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Shawn. I'm a longtime Tri-Valley resident, mother and grandmother of 3 kids who are here in the Livermore Joint Unified School District in high school, middle school, and elementary school. So first of all, I want to thank the board for doing a fantastic job. And don't let anybody tell you that you're not. I know that it's a lot harder these days with the things that are going on. But I am here certainly to support Moms Demand Action, but more importantly, Chris knows that I am all about being smart and gun safety issues. I'm sure that you realize that there have been quite a few school shootings this year, already 23. 23, and you know, we're just a little beyond halfway through the year. And that doesn't even account for the mall things or other public shootings that have gone on. So our message in being smart is to help people realize that they can reduce unintentional child gun deaths by being smart. And this is a message that I hope the school board will disseminate to the families, because it's a lot of things like secure storage. That's the first thing, secure storage, modeling good behavior. And I'm all about this because, you know, our kids are watching us. And if you think that it's okay to threaten people to get your way, then so do they. So modeling good behavior, asking about guns in the home, recognizing the role of guns in teen suicide. In fact, did you know that in the last year, they did a survey and 20% of teens in this country had considered committing suicide. And if they have access to a gun, they're much more likely to succeed at doing it. And lastly, to tell people about this program to be smart. So I'm happy to give these presentations. They're only 15 minutes. We do them for school boards. We'd like to reach more parents. And however you think we could get that done, that would be a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Ron Carell Feichner.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So first off, I'd like to say best wishes for the school board for the coming school year. Hello to the president, superintendent, and the employee of Livermore Unified. I'm looking forward to the next year. Also, we all know summer goes by too quickly, but that's just the way it is. As an employee of Livermore Valley Unified School District, I wanted to thank you for standing up for LGBTQ youth and employees in our district last year, not giving in and listening to, I'll just call it the hate from the other side, trying to marginalize our community. And I want to extend that to our board meetings. And the one thing I wanted to say, this was the beginning of a new school year, a fresh start. I'm hoping our board meetings can continue to be productive. And for the last year, during the school year, there was sometimes some members would come up here in costumes and mocking members of the LGBTQ community. And I just wanted to say, as a member of that community, I found that very offensive. And I'm hoping that if there is anything we can do to not let that kind of thing happen again, I don't think people should get up here and waste your time and make a mockery of our board meetings and use this platform to mock a minority group, the LGBTQ community, or target individuals within that community. I know we all have our First Amendment, but you can't yell fire in a theater, and I don't feel like targeting individuals and making fun of them and mocking them is a good use, falls under what is allowed under free speech, in my opinion. I might be wrong. So I would just hope that we could also make these board meetings feel safe for everyone. I know as being part of Livermore Indivisible in some groups, there have been some youth who have not felt safe speaking at our board meetings because of the people who came in costumes, somebody in a lab coat with blood on it, mocking the LGBTQ community. So they don't feel safe here to speak their mind, and I don't think that's okay. You know, okay to disagree, but it's not okay to use this platform to mock or make fun of others, in my opinion. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and let's have a great year for 2023, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. That's going to close our non-agendized comments, and we're going to move into section 8.2. This is formal written correspondence to the Board of Education. Now, we'll acknowledge that if it's received by the board or in the superintendent's office by 1600 hours the day before a meeting. Formal written correspondence received after the cutoff time, we'll generally acknowledge it at the following regular meeting. And the note on that is that our board electronic communications we received via the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District website with all the fields completed and verified. That'll be treated as formal written correspondence. So with that, I'd ask our clerk, Trustee Prusso, if you'd summarize any comments we've received.
Yes, Kate Sorrell, retired educator and past LEA president, commented in regards to school board meetings and the challenge the board is having getting school business done. And Catherine Rainey, parent, commented suggesting that only the audio be used during public comment to remove costume speakers from social media. And that concludes the public comment.
All right. We're going to move right into thank you, and we'll move right into our discussion items. Mr. Van Schack, if you could introduce 9-1, please.
Fantastic. To my right is Teresa Fiskus, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. And for our first item, she will be providing the board with information about the 45-day budget revision.
Thank you. Good evening, President Bueno, members of the board, Superintendent Van Schack, and Cabinet. Tonight I'm here to present information on the 45-day revision for our budget. So the major changes that occurred at the state level since we adopted our budget in June is that the governor did move forward with his proposal to reduce 2 of the previously awarded block grants. The good news is that the reductions came in significantly lower than the governor's original proposal. So the art and music discretionary block grant was originally proposed to be reduced by 50%. Instead came in at a 5.5% reduction, reducing our grant down from $8,049,623 to the $7,606,894, resulting in a decrease to our district of $442,729. For the learning recovery block grant, the original proposed reduction was 30%. That was reduced down to 20.2%. Reducing our grant down from $7,601,213 to $6,065,768. That is a decrease of $1,535,445 for our district. So those reductions are shown here in the effect of our final balances. So our estimated beginning fund balance was reduced by the combined total of $1,998,174. And it's on that line of the spreadsheet that was included in the board packet. Our projected revenues were not adjusted, and so they remained at $192,609,512, shown there on the financial report. Our projected expenditures were reduced for the $462,729 related to the reduction of the art and music discretionary block grant, reducing our expenditures down to $204,836,487, shown on that line. And our estimated ending fund balance was reduced by $1,535,445, which is the reduction to the learning recovery block grant. shown on that item there. The components that make up our ending fund balance of the $8,050,190 are, we have $50,000 in our revolving fund. We have $234,475 in stores inventory. We are meeting our required 3% reserve for economic uncertainties at $6,145,096. We have restricted ending fund balances of $1,487,785, resulting in unrestricted funds of $132,834. Our next steps are that we will continue to monitor the budget. We will update the budget with any grant projections as information is released at the state level. We will update all of our site budget projections with actual enrollment based on day 14. We will update all of our salary projections as HR makes final hiring decisions. And we will adjust our spending plans for the one-time funding reductions I previously discussed. Also, we will be bringing the 2022-2023 unaudited actuals to our board for approval the September 5th board meeting. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on our 45-day budget revision.
Thank you very much. We have no cards. We'll close the public comment, and then we'll, any questions or comments? Trustee Druin.
So I know you can't answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So I know that I think taxes aren't due till October or something like that. So how, what's your sense of how final this is? Or, is it going to slide down a little bit more? Or what's the sense from the field or from your colleagues about how final these changes are?
What we're hearing from School Services of California, who is the main organization within the state that generally gives guidance on these type of topics, is that to take the state budget with a grain of salt and some caution. They are concerned the way the governor and the state has used projections to forecast their budget, and so there's concerns that they may come back mid-year. However, they said basically move forward and plan your budget basically with the facts you know now. And the thought is that if there are reductions, those will be in out years, that most likely there won't be any additional reductions to the current year.
And the state did put quite a bit away in reserves.
The state has significant funds in reserves, and they also have the rainy day fund that they can go to if they declare a budget emergency.
Okay. It's just that once you commit school district budgets, the money's spent. I mean, it's hard to claw back money that's already spent. So I would imagine there'd have to be at some point some discussion amongst school districts, and if there was an adjustment that was negative, I can't imagine it affecting the school year.
Usually negative adjustments would be affected in the subsequent fiscal year based on the reasons you just stated. So most school districts have their budgets. In fact, all school districts have their budgets in place at this point. Most school districts' budgets are comprised of 85 to 90% of staff. And so it's nearly impossible to make budget reductions that late in the year. You already have students and teachers in classrooms. You've already put in purchase orders to buy supplies. We've already entered into contracts at that point. So yes, it would be very difficult to pull back any funding from our budget at this point. And so generally the state moves forward with reductions in out years to offset. Again, there hasn't been any proposal or any comments, though, that will happen at this time.
So just to clarify, in our last meeting and a little bit before, there was a lot of worry, and we were looking at things in terms of a fiscal, I don't want to say crisis, but a crunch that could happen because we hadn't received the budget. But as it looks, we're fully funded, and that was fully funded based on record funding that we'd received. And it looks like there's two grants that were these large grants that were reduced by a percentage, but a smaller percentage than what we had anticipated.
Yes, and the most significant impact to our district was the reduction in the proposed reduction to the art and music discretionary block grant. That was the most concerning to our district. It was originally proposed at a 50% reduction, and that specific budget our district had fully expended. We had the entire amount of that grant budgeted in our current year, which is why you saw we did reduce expenses in the current year to offset the reduction of that grant. If the state had truly reduced it by 50%, it would have created almost a budget crisis in our district. It would have been very significant to our budget.
Okay, well, it's glad that we didn't go down the bad road. And
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
We
okay.
we did have plans in place. The board passed a resolution, and so we were being fiscally responsible in making plans if that came to fruition, but we are very, very happy to tell the board that it did not, that the reductions came in significantly lower.
Thank you. Good news. All right. Trustee
I
Guzman?
just want to reiterate, so last year, the end of last year, academic year, we were looking at, I think it was a 6 million reduction or something similar. Now we're looking at 1.5 million.
Reductions related to the block grants, correct.
Okay. And we feel confident like we're going to meet these and reductions.
We feel confident that this will be the amount of the reduction. The state has already given us the proposed journal entries to make on our books as we close the 2022-23 year. The revenue was actually received in the previous fiscal year, which is why you see a reduction to our fund balance instead of a reduction to our revenues. And so we feel very confident that there won't be any additional reductions to that.
Okay. Thank you.
But just to clarify, we passed two resolutions. One was what happens if this moves forward in this year? And as you recall, we were going to leave positions unfilled, for example. We had like 35 positions identified as if we don't receive this money, we'll have to reduce positions in the 23-24. The other was we had to provide the county with assurance that in out years, we would be able to meet our required minimum, our reserve, and so that was a separate resolution. So this saved, the crisis for the 23-24 year. We still have some conversations we need to have for out years, but that was something that we had projected all the way back in October of last year. So what we were saved from is sort of this cliff that we were concerned about when they said they're going to pull millions of dollars away that we had already allocated to staffing. So we're in really good shape for the coming year. We still have conversations we need to make for out years.
Okay. It doesn't, I mean, a lot of it is just being, from a fiduciary sense, just being responsible. But there's nothing that's material to that discussion in terms of, I mean, the state has record, I don't want to say surplus, but they have more money in reserve than in the history. It's the fourth largest economy in the world. One would anticipate, not a crystal ball, that with a presidential election coming, that and an economy that's being falsely restrained because of inflation, that the economy is going to do really well in those off years. And the giant job creator that California is. So I mean, it just seems like California is doing really, really well. And we've got a governor that's firmly in place, that's tied to the federal government. It just seems like, to me, it's positive news. And I know that we always have to think about a cliff. Personally, I just don't see the cliff. I see that we're in a very, very good position. We have a governor that supports education. Nothing came to fruition except excessive funds, and they put it all in the bank. So I don't see. I'm glad that we did plan. And I'm glad that we have the relationship with all our bargaining groups, that we can have those conversations and stuff. But it sounds very optimistic to me, just from my perspective.
We felt like we're really well positioned. Again, the lateness of the tax filing creates some uneasiness.
Right.
So I think we still have some hesitation there. But again, I mean, we planned for the worst, and the worst didn't happen, and so we're in a good position. And I'm glad we certainly planned for the worst, which we will continue to do. But I agree with your optimism that as we move forward, there's reasons to think that things will be good in 24-25 and 25-26, and the economists who we listen to have generally optimistic views of that too, for many of the reasons you mentioned: presidential election, strong economy, inflation likely to be reduced, so.
And it,
it's all-
and it
it's all
just,
good
the
news.
reason I say it is, it's not in any way of a criticism, it's simply in the sense of, it's a stabilizing thing. When the funding is the backbone of everything. And, you know, there's 1,500 people that work here, and there's 13,000 kids that go to our schools, and, you know, when people see like an impending doom, and I think it's important that we're cautiously optimistic, but that also we have a plan in case things don't pan out. But I think, you know, just from my single perspective, I think it's important that the public knows that the money is managed well, and that we do have a state that supports education. I mean, the governor put record funding into our LCAP. I mean, LCAP's the right term? Okay, yeah. The funding was record level, and so to follow that with another year where they're saying, yeah, here's your money again, but we're going to reduce some of your block grants, that's very telling to me in terms of how the state has steered towards support of public education. And to me, that's good for everyone. It's good for recruitment and retention, and it's really good for our students. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for the report. Sir, if you could introduce 9-2.
I
We're
will.
looking forward to that one.
So I am really honored to bring this item to the board, and this has to do with the naming of the Livermore High School Theater. You'll recall we began this conversation last year. Livermore High School pulled together a committee, and those committee members were listed there. Ms. Prusso was part of that, and Ms. Gladden, teachers, community members. And really, the conversation was about honoring a longtime, well-respected, really adored member of our Livermore community. And so they discussed the renaming of the Livermore High Theater, and they unanimously agreed on 3 potential names, one being the Carol Hovey Performing Arts Theater, the second option being the Carol Hovey Livermore Performing Arts Theater, and the third being the Carol Hovey Livermore Theater for the Performing Arts. You'll notice one thing that's common with all 3 of those. And so this group came together. This is their order of preference. Our policy, they submit names as per administrative regulations. We bring these to 2 meetings, 2 consecutive meetings. We announce the sort of finalists. We give folks an opportunity to weigh in if they choose to do so, and then the board will take action. And so we'll ask the board to select one of the 3 at the next board meeting. It will be an action item, and again, open for any conversations. But again, they were listed, as you'll see here. That was the order of preference from the committee, 1, 2, and 3. So again, any conversation or any communication from the public will proceed. A final decision at our next meeting.
Thank you very much. We do have one speaker, Michael Rasmussen. Good evening.
Good evening, board. My name is Michael Rasmussen, and I'm a Livermore High graduate from the class of 2022, so pretty recent. And I just wanted to come up in here and thank you guys for considering renaming the theater after Miss Carol Hovey. I worked under her for 4 years when I was in school, even through the pandemic, and I just wanted to say how much of a great time she made school for me. I know for myself and a lot of other students who joined her program that when we were in school, we were mostly like kind of heads down working on grades and stuff, and we weren't really getting involved until we found the program that she was running. And when we joined, we found it was such a great place for students to go and get involved with their school in areas where they found they were lacking. And I know for myself, and I know for many other students, that it just made our school experience just that much better throughout the years. She was able to create such a supportive group that I myself made many friends who I never would have been able to meet if not for Miss Carol Hovey, as well as learning new skills and finding new passions in theater that again would not have been available to me if she was not there. And for that reason, I wanted to thank you guys just because of how big of an impact she has made on my life and the many other students she has impacted throughout her 38 years of service. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's our last of our comment cards, so we'll close public comment, and we'll start our board comments with Trustee Pruso.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this as well. I agree with Michael 100%. And I was honored to be on the committee of naming her. You can see that we were very creative with the names. But two of my children also participated in the theater program at Livermore High School, and it was an amazing program, still is, and I think she's built it up so that it'll stay that way. But I was just going to say one of my favorite performances that she did was a performance of 1776 that was an all-female cast, and that was really awesome. Yeah, so I think she was always thinking outside of the box and always trying to be creative and do different things, and it was just really amazing to go to the performances. So I'm excited that we can honor her and what she's done for our community in this way. So we appreciate the students, I think, are the ones who came to us and with this idea, and it's fantastic. So I'm sure we'll have a unanimous vote next time, but just really excited that this is happening.
Thank you very much. Trustee Wong?
I'm also very happy to see this happening. I don't know if you wanted us to state preferences now, or do we wait till next meeting?
Okay. You could talk about it, sure.
I mean, I don't, they're all so different that it's hard to choose. No, but I would pick the first one just for brevity. Yeah. Easier to say, shorter. So. Good job, committee.
I do want to say we did specifically, there was talk about just the hubby performing, and we really wanted to put her full name in there, and also for our young women to see it's just sort of a really successful role model. It's great.
Anything else? Okay, thanks. I'll wait till we hit it on the 5th. Thank you very much. All right.
Okay, moving on to...
Yeah, move into our action items.
Okay, number 10.1. I'd like to introduce Amy Robbins. She's our Executive Director of Human Resources, and this evening she will bring to the board the Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Teachers.
Good evening, President Bueno, Superintendent Van Schack, members of the board. Here is our annual presentation for the Declaration of Needs for Fully Qualified Educators. As an employing institution, we must have this on file each year with the California Commission for Teaching Credentialing. And what this is an estimation of the number of permits that we will be submitting to expand our workforce. And those permits include internships as well. It's better to overestimate than to under. And we don't have to utilize all of the permits for which we're bringing forth this evening. But if we do underestimate, then we will bring it back to you to amend our declaration. And those permits are really looking at those teachers that we get from outside of the state or even internally who have experience in areas, but maybe their credentials or the authorizations aren't aligned to those areas. There's been a lot of work done within the state over the last 2 years to look at automating credentialing and looking at course coding and alignment. And so our permits are going to allow us to make sure that there's an alignment and that is caught in that automated system. The permits we're bringing forth this year, as they have been in the past, are our CLAD certifications. So many of our programs have the cross-cultural language acquisition development permit built in. However, we do get employees that come from out of state or who have been a member of a program that didn't have that at the time. And so our CLAD permits we're bringing forth, we anticipate an estimated need for 5 permits for this given school year. BCLAD is similar, although BCLAD is for bilingual, so our teachers that are in our dual immersion program. Again, we're overestimating, but we have 5 permits we're bringing forth this evening. And with the CTC, the Commission for Teaching Credentialing, they have done some reframing of our special education authorizations, and so we are bringing forth 4 permits potentially to be utilized this year for our resource specialists to support our students in our special education program. Those permits also pertain to limited assignments, And so each year we look at each of those single subject areas or multiple subject areas or special education areas. And so those teachers who are credentialed but expanding their area of influence or sphere of influence, we have limited assignment permits. And this evening we are bringing forth those three categories: a multiple subject with an estimation of 3 permits for this given school year, single subject. They were the form changed this year, very explicit about all of the categories for single subject permits. And so we anticipate there's an overage on the slide of 33, but we wanted to bring that forth this evening. And last but not least, supporting our students in our special education programs with education specialists of an estimated permits of 5. Outside of that, we also have the opportunity and have been employing employees that are in credentialing programs. We partner with a range of colleges and universities that have internship programs, and that allows those teachers that are in those programs to be employed by us, and there is an agreement between us and that institution, and they have a master teacher to oversee and support. Internship programs are usually a 2-year program. And so we anticipate the number of interns that we may have this year, whether it be in the classroom or counselors or psychologists, speech and language, to be 25. That I did notice that in the printed out version, the 2 and 25 was obscured. So I want to make sure that I point out this evening that that is 25 permits that we will be estimating to apply for this given school year. And again, this comes forth every year. We are excited this school year. We've been out there advertising starting in February and March. We've had a lot of great success with recruiting. We've brought a lot of people into the field, even internally, looking at those paraeducators who are supporting in special education positions or other areas, multiple subject teachers who are excited to explore new areas. And so we bring this forth every year, just to verify that we have done our due diligence to gain fully credentialed teachers, but we're also committed to developing those teachers, and that's where we're coming forth this evening for these permits. And so it's our superintendent's recommendation to adopt the declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
Thank you very much. We have no cards, so we'll close public comment. Any questions? I know it's a routine procedure. No questions, comments? Oh, Trustee Wong.
I have a great memory. How different are these numbers? How do they compare to past years?
So the past year's numbers were up there. They're very similar. Okay. We have always overestimated as far as the actuals. We have rarely come anywhere close, but just out of an abundance of caution, wanting to make sure that we were consistent with years past and making sure that we're overestimating as opposed to under.
Okay, so they're not that different from how it's been.
But you can see the 3 years are there in front of you.
Okay. And is the idea that you're not supposed to employ the same person as an emergency or on these credentials over and over, like they're supposed to be working towards?
There are limitations, and those that are working towards it allows more flexibility for the out years. Some have chosen to fully pursue it and then become fully credentialed, so we don't need to apply for the permit. So there's a range of circumstances that leads us to this.
But nothing prevents us from keeping the same person.
There are limitations,
hiring them.
yes.
Oh, there are?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Thank you, Trustee Wong. Trustee Guzman.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, and one of our speakers also mentioned it. I did notice all of the active hiring, and I've spoken to a few teachers at school sites, and so the staffing looks really great, stronger. I think there are very fewer, there's still some openings, but not as in previous years, so commend both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Drone.
First, I just wanted to say, I think it's fascinating thinking that this is an action that the school board has to do. I just the idea of setting an allotment for the number of permits and then setting that out. Secondly, I'm excited that they're small numbers because that's a good thing. But I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So on the limited assignment permits, there's 33. So my assumption is if you have a chemistry teacher that maybe isn't credentialed to teach physics, then you can use one of those 33 cards that they can teach physics for the next years.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. But going with Trustee Wong's question, If I was an English teacher that wanted to teach science, maybe there's an instance that that could happen, but you don't just keep getting that card for infinity, that the idea is that you will become a credentialed in that, you know, to push you towards that.
Exactly.
Cool, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. With no further questions, I'd entertain, this is an action item, so I entertain a motion on this.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the Declaration of Need for fully qualified educators.
Thank you.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion in support of the superintendent's recommendation on this item by Trustee Prusso, and it's been seconded by Trustee Guzman. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Trustee Wong?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Trustee Druin?
Aye.
Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
President Bueno?
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And 10.2, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to introduce a topic for conversation, discussion, and potential action regarding board meeting procedures. And just a little bit of background information. We highly value public participation in our board meetings, and we have in our bylaw 9323 a statement basically that states that very thing. And again, I underlined here one phrase that I think is significant, and it is a reminder that comments are intended to be for items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So it would not be appropriate for somebody to come to a board meeting and talk about happenings at the city or happenings in a different school district. And so that's just a reminder that we do already have as a bylaw that restriction. The challenge that we face as a governing board is that oftentimes board business begins very late in the meeting. The reason for the board to come together is to make important decisions on matters that impact student achievement, and oftentimes because of the abundance of comments, that oftentimes we don't begin that process until very late. That also discourages public participation. If an item that a member of the public would like to weigh in on, for example, adoption of curriculum, that doesn't come up until 10:30, that actually discourages public participation. So that's sort of the challenge that we face is developing meetings in which board business is taken care of in a time that makes some sense. Just to go back and provide a little bit of data, these are the number of public comments for non-agenda items. And so again, the conversation is really about non-agenda comments, not those items that are on the agenda, which again, you know, we highly value comments on things that we're making decisions on. So these are the numbers of comments, and each of the asterisks represents a board meeting that ended past 10:30. So obviously you see a correlation between large numbers of public comments for non-agenda items and lateness of meetings. This is last year. And you see that toward the end of last year, we had an abundance of comments. If we go back another year to 21-22, we see the end of the year was pretty light, but the middle of the year, those were primarily folks who came to speak about vaccines and masks and things like that. But again, you see large numbers of comments, and that correlates with lateness of meetings. So again, just in terms of public participation, it does allow board members or the board president to adjust allotted time if there's exceptional circumstances. We are looking to continue to allow a diversity of viewpoints, so any adjustments should be done with the idea that we still want those diverse viewpoints. And as has happened in many of our meetings, the president has suggested that members of the public with similar viewpoints maybe get individuals to speak on behalf of the group. That does limit some of the comments. So some potential modifications that have been discussed and are implemented in other school districts to try to create maybe shorter meetings and an opportunity for the board to address board business earlier is you could reduce time for public comment from the current 3 minutes to X, which X could be whatever you want, 2 minutes or a minute and a half. You could say we are going to reduce time allowed for public comment if the speaker cards exceed a number, 10, 15, 20, something like that. So that's an option. You could move public comment for non-agendized items until after board business is completed. That's another possibility. Or you could limit time for public comment on non-agendized items to, say, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then move the remainder to after board business is completed. So these are just ideas that other districts have considered in an effort to manage board business in a time when board members are fresh and members of the audience are able to participate fully. Just, again, the purpose is to introduce the topic for board conversation. It does not necessarily require board action, but board action is certainly a possibility if that's the pleasure of the board. And I will leave it there and allow the president and trustees to comment.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple cards, and so I'd like to call a few of our speakers. We'll start with Emily Wilson. And she'll be followed by Aaron Haycraft.
Good evening, Board President Bueno, Superintendent Van Schack, board members, cabinet, and community. My name is Emily Wilson, and I'm speaking tonight in regards to our board meeting procedures. And I wanted to thank you for putting this on the agenda tonight. I hope you all had a restful and reflective summer. Druin, I know you had a fun summer, but you've already been called out for that. And I'm looking forward to jumping back into the school year and taking action to protect our students. As we know, our school board meetings, last year especially, have become hateful, distracting, and are stopping you all from getting actual work done for all our students. Community members and students have consistently spoken out about how they no longer feel safe coming to these meetings due to harassment inside and outside these doors. We are pleading that the board take action against these hateful individuals that are targeting and harassing valuable members of our community. I am requesting, like the recommendations say, that public comment guidelines be changed, and I do agree that they should be moved to the end of board meetings. And whether the board president uses his jurisdiction to remove those using hate speech or clear the room, something must be done to protect our staff, students, and community. I am fearful that if we continue down this path, words will turn to physical violence or harm. Thank you as always for taking the time to hear our concerns, and I'm looking forward to being proactive with protecting our students and those who deserve to have their voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Aaron Haycraft.
Super funny. I actually wrote this speech a month ago, not knowing this is going to be on the agenda. So I'm actually really proud of myself for having the foresight. Anyways, so good evening, Superintendent Van Schack, President Bueno, and esteemed school board members. I hope you all also had a restful summer. Thank you, Emily, for stealing my line and enjoyed your time away from these meetings. I know I did. I'd like to start off by formally thanking all of you on the board for the Pride Month declaration back in June. It meant a lot to me as a citizen, and I'm sure it meant more to all the LGBTQ+ students in the district, as I was not there at that meeting. I have to admit, I now never know what to expect at these meetings. I feel like it's awkward all the way around. Things being shouted by the audience, people filming everyone as they walk out, even having to have police or district personnel walk people to their cars. It's continuing to become more difficult to speak at these events. I'm hoping that with the start of a new school year, that all of us on all sides can be orderly, cordial, and understand that we are all different with differing views. However, I'm going to make a recommendation that if things go to how they were a few months ago, President Bueno, I know that you mentioned in a break, I think it was back in April or something like that, that you enjoyed hearing everybody speak and that you enjoy the decorum of the board meetings itself. I feel like some people are abusing that privilege. My recommendation is, limit how many people speak or the overall public comment. I think that would drastically cut back on the rhetoric from both sides and cool down all the drama that exists. Another idea, which was also mentioned, was could be requesting that only a couple people from one side of an issue speak. So that way it would kind of, I mean, everybody in the groups knows each other, so it wouldn't be that hard to kind of get all that kind of organized. I'm making this suggestion so that way we can have true spirited debate, not just lobbing hurtful words to hurt each other. I feel like there has been a lack of decorum, and I'd like to see it return. I'm sure that this decision would affect both sides equally and also hopefully help expedite these board meetings. I saw something once that where the best decisions are where no one side ends up happy. And I feel like these recommendations, as well as the other ones suggested tonight, will do just that. Thank you all for listening. Remember, love always wins. And where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Joanne Morrison. Good evening.
Good evening, President Bueno, members of the board, Superintendent Van Schack, and cabinet. It's good to see you all again. This evening, I am going to read from a letter that you have already received from Kate Saray, former president of the LEA, because I think some of it bears repeating and it also reflects my own views about the situation. Recently, the public communications during the communications from the public period have made it difficult, at times impossible, for the board to do the work they have sworn to do. Certain speakers challenge the authority of the board and demand the board violate state laws. These speakers distract not only the board members, they distract and delay the work and workers who are trying to ensure that all students receive the appropriate instruction they need to learn and become effective members of the community. They congregate in the lobby before and during the meeting. They distribute literature and materials that have not been approved by the district. They harass members of the audience during the meeting, in the lobby, and in the parking lot. They stand in the doorway in order to video speakers. They prowl the boardroom, making hateful remarks to people who disagree with them. Additional security measures are needed to protect district employees and members of the audience. A camera and mic need to be installed in the lobby, and a security guard needs to be stationed in the lobby from the time the door is unlocked until the meeting has been adjourned, and a security guard needs to patrol the parking lot to prevent members of the audience from being followed to their cars. I would add that we need better lighting in the parking lot as well. I know district employees are doing the best they can, but this isn't their job. There are a number of methods that could be employed to correct these issues. First, the communications from the public needs to be moved further down on the agenda. Since it is by definition topics that are not on the agenda and the board may not respond to anything they say, it should take place after the consent items are approved. Second, the amount of time allotted to these communications should be limited to 30 minutes. If there are more than 10 speakers, the amount of time each speaker has should be limited to 1 or 2 minutes, depending on the number of speakers. And then there are the costumed performers who come. As an example, 2 men who live in Castro Valley and Fremont have no business with the board. But they engage in performance art regarding culture war issues not within the control or responsibility of the board. The board needs to adjust how they handle that portion of the meeting to ensure that it can complete its actual duties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, that's our last speaker, so we're going to go ahead and close public comment on that. And any ideas? It's an action item, not asking for a motion right away, but if there's a discussion. Trustee Wong.
I don't know why everyone looked at me, but maybe because outside of school board, I've probably for about 5 years have been an active policy advocate on other issues throughout the Bay Area. I attend a lot of school board city council, county supervisor meetings. I speak at those meetings, give public comment. So I've had an opportunity to see how other jurisdictions and governing bodies handle this issue. And I've also, in the past 6 months in particular, reached out to some of my colleagues on those boards and sort of asked them about their experiences. And they've also in the past year made changes to their meeting protocols. And I've also consulted city attorneys on legalities and all these kinds of things. So what I'm going to advocate for tonight is based on both what's legal and what's common practice throughout the Bay Area. These are things, and some are changes that were made in this past year. They've worked very well, and so I'm not pulling these ideas out of thin air. This is what's been working in other places, mostly on the East Bay, in the Tri-Valley, including our own city council. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is that we limit public comment to half an hour at the beginning of the meeting. And then any additional speakers will go at the end after all our votes are done. So that would be after our votes on consent items and resolutions. You know, staff has presented. I don't like staff sitting in the back of the room for 4 or 5 hours and then presenting at 11, 12 o'clock at night. We at least once that I can remember, we had a staff person sit there all night and then get sent home because we didn't have time for her to present at all. And she had to come back. I don't want that kind of thing to happen. They work all day. They have to come back early the next morning. That shouldn't happen. And the point of these meetings is for us to conduct our business. Our business shouldn't, our meetings get co-opted by people who, you know, for whatever they're here to talk about. I'm not saying it's not legitimate, but let us get our business done first, and then I'll stay here all night with you if you want to talk. But let our staff go home. And then, let's see, so one thing is to just allot half an hour. That's enough, and that's what almost all the governing bodies are doing, half an hour, and then we can come back after we've conducted our business. And then the second thing is that when we have a lot of speakers, we usually hear 2 or 3 viewpoints, and then everyone's repeating what someone else has said. And some people add really great, important anecdotes or experiences to that, but we are hearing a lot of the same things, so everyone doesn't need 3 minutes. So I'm going to propose that up to 10 speakers, you get 3 minutes. More than, from between 10 and 20, it's 2 minutes. More than 20 speakers, 1 minute. And I've given plenty of public comments that were 1 minute long. You speak like an auctioneer, but it works. You can do it. And that means a lot of other people have spoken before you and have expressed your views. You don't have to say that much more. And you can cut your speech down. I've walked in with a 3-minute speech that I had to, on the fly, cut down to 1 minute. You can do that. It's possible. And people do it all over the Bay Area in all kinds of meetings. Our own city council does it that way. And then another thing, so those are really my 2 main suggestions. Another thing I want to add is that when people turning in cards to speak, I feel like we should put a limit to when cards can continue to be submitted, so people don't keep responding to what someone said. Oh, I just heard this, I want to speak to that, I'm going to turn in a card. So I feel like when the speaking period has begun, for whether it's on an agenda item or during public comment, that no more cards will be accepted at that point. And that also reminds me, on agenda items, we should allow as many people as are there to speak on an agenda item. I don't think we should limit that to half an hour if you're there to speak on an agenda item, but we should do the time limits. If there are more than 10 people, 2 minutes, more than 20, 1 minute. And so, yeah, so that's it for the agenda items. And that's it. Those are my suggestions based on common practice and based on what's legal.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Guzman?
Okay, thank you. Similarly, I was leaning toward 3 or 4 number of those potential modifications. I have a question. The ones that you proposed, Trustee Wong, seem very reasonable to me. Just some clarifying questions. So public comment, limit it to 30 minutes, and then return. And then the first 10 speakers get 3 minutes, and then 11 to 20, the next 11 to 20 speakers get 2 minutes, and we go down. Is that within the 30 minutes? The first?
You would adjust.
That's not what,
Oh.
you would get the number in advance. So her suggestion was, which I agree with, you have to turn in your comment
Right.
card before we begin that, whatever that
The public,
agenda item
okay.
is. And then we can count how many cards there are. So everyone will get equal number of minutes. So not, some people are going to get 3.
Oh,
But
I
if
see.
there's more than 10, if there's 20 speakers, say, then there'll be 2 minutes. Everyone will get 2 minutes. Is that right?
Okay.
Because I think it has to be equal.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the clarification, and I thank you for that. And I also really like the idea of we stop collecting cards during the item, or, we're it's like last call for cards, that's it, we go, move forward, and that's that.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Pruso.
Yeah, I like all of Trustee Wong's ideas. I agree, 30 minutes. And the one thing that I wanted to say, but she said, was to in advance, you have to turn in your card before that item begins on the agenda. I also agree with the agendized items that, we can't limit it to 30 minutes. We need to give everyone their chance. But I think we could limit the timing depending on how many people turn in a card for that.
On an agendized item?
On an agendized item.
Okay.
The only other thing I would say is that I think we can be really flexible on this, and as long as we give at least one meeting's heads up to the public, we could try things, and if something's not working, I feel like we could adjust, if you guys are okay with that, as long as we don't adjust that day, that we let people know at the next meeting, we're going to try this. I think we can kind of come to something that works for us by being flexible. So I think that's basically I have very similar thoughts that Trustee Wong had, so.
Thank you. Trustee John.
My thoughts will probably be a little bit more rambling, but I've been thinking about this, and I think that time and decorum are the kind of two things that are a challenge for us. Is that, as Trustee Wong said, when it's 11 o'clock and we're trying to ask questions, of staff about LPAC, it's none of us are, in a position to think critically and to do our job. Our job is to, is to ask the tough questions, to understand, and so time and then decorum. And I think that some of what we've talked about is addressing time and decorum. I don't know if that's something, I think that's, I like Trustee Pruso's, let's try and let's see what happens. And I think it's nice to know that these are things that we can adjust as long as we discuss it and we give, that it's fair, that we're creating rules that everyone is going to follow. And I think at its core is two things. We have a right to hear public comment, and I think that that's absolutely essential, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I would also say that, at least for me personally, I think I speak for all of us, is that people that write letters, I read every single letter. I pay attention to it, and that's a way of communicating with us, and it gets your message to us, and we pay attention to it. So I think I would also advocate for, if you want us to know about it, write it to us, because I'm going to read that like Wednesday morning or something like that instead of the 14th time, and it's going to be fresh in my brain. So I'd advocate that as well. But right to hear public comment balanced with our obligation to conduct business and to get the business done. And so I think that the suggestions, I'm not crying, I'm just allergies. Allergies. Your suggestions are good.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, and I like the examples that you cited. And I, too, have been going to government meetings for over 30 years. And I went to city council meetings that were every single Tuesday. So I've participated in these meetings for a long time. I don't think that there's a content issue. I know that some of the speakers tonight mentioned content. And I know that people can be offended by content, but my experience has been that there's some guardrails there that are very difficult to manage. What insults or one person doesn't like, and we've had a recent example of that, where people who might have come from the same perspective were actually offended by some of the theater. And so content is very difficult to manage within the confines of the First Amendment, which is, it's first for a reason. When I talk with the superintendent on this, it sounds like it's just a time management issue, and that's the concern, is time management. And so what I had asked was, well, let's look back at our meetings and how many meetings did we have, and go back, and how many comment cards and how much time is actually being used, within that. So I'm all for limiting a number so that we can get to the business. My concern with putting things at the end is disparate treatment and who comes first. And I've seen the workarounds. I've seen them in my years in government. People will come and stuff the box early to be in the first 10. Sometimes people want to speak to the staff that leaves when you do it at the end, and so people will complain. And it's just to give people the platform under their First Amendment rights to be able to be heard. And I'm always concerned about that. The time management piece, I completely get, and I agree with you. Whether that's having a deadline, going from when we post the agendas, if we went from 3 minutes to, we look at something, we can usually tell. When we do the agenda reviews, we can usually tell, not always, if we're going to get a large crowd. And if we went to 90 seconds, that cuts it in half, from 3 to a minute and a half. And I'm all for that. And then also a pilot where we say, hey, we'll do this for the next couple, and whatever that is. But I do have some concerns. The decorum thing, I don't know that we can fix that. I mean, we're little school boards, and we have a national platform that's using school boards going back a few years, all the way back to COVID. And I mean, it's national direction to come here and talk about CRT and things that we're not even doing these things. Don't vaccinate our kids, and we had no plan to do that. So people are using these meetings to push a national agenda, and I don't know how much we can do. We try to monitor it. I've been, president here for a little bit, and when people hit those boundaries. But I know that when you toss someone out of a meeting or tell them to cease what they're saying, it's shocking, and it sends ripple effects, and sometimes the backlash or the water hammer that comes after that is worse than the effect. And it's not easy. But I do like the idea of looking at it from a pilot. It's the next couple of meetings, let's do it like this. You try to do little things, but people are insulted by different things. And to me, as someone who's been running these meetings, I try to be real cautious that I don't agree with everything that's said. Sometimes I agree with very little that's said, and sometimes I agree with almost everything that's said. But I always try to be very conscious of the different perspective, and that you hear people out, let them say it. But to Mr. Van Schack's point, there's our business that we're trying to get to. We're literally trying to talk about kids and books and curriculum, and someone comes and dresses up and takes our time, and then in the process of that, someone might be insulted by the content of what they say. That is a much more difficult thing to monitor. It's difficult. Not to say that if someone's wrong, but when people's opinions as to what's legal and what's not legal and what you should govern and not be allowed to be said, that's a very difficult path. And I don't see that here. What I see here is time management piece. And the time management piece, I'm completely in agreement. However we end up doing that, I can work. I don't like the idea of doing the comments at the end. I'll go with it if that's what everyone wants, but I think doing it in the beginning and limiting your time, you get a better result, and there's less workarounds to it than putting them at the end, because then you have the people who get here early and they put their 10 comment cards in. And sometimes we've heard this before, where people come and they say, well, I have 3 minutes prepared. And then you limit them down when you hit a certain threshold, and they get down to 1 minute. And, I know it's easy for us to say, well, you're all saying the same thing, but it's their words. and they may have their own way of being heard, and it's just a different sense. So when I talked to Mr. Van Schack about this a while back, when we were setting up the agenda, my opinion on it is if you're going to limit the time, then just do it in advance. Like, you know, when we publish the agenda, that we say, listen, public comment on non-agendized items is going to be 90 seconds. That's just, I mean, if we choose something different, I'll go with that. But it's just, I don't like for someone to come here with 3 minutes of bona fide content and have to par it down because we all can't speak that fast. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying about splitting it, because there could be some people who have to wait and some people who don't.
Right.
So I understand that, and I feel like the only way through that is, like you said, everyone speaks at the beginning or everyone speaks at the end. But I'd prefer to keep them at the beginning, like you said. I feel like this is one of the things that we could be flexible on, like we could try and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to limit the time, but to keep everyone together at the beginning. I don't know.
I think that's what is scaling the right word, right? You know, 1 to 10 is 3 minutes,
Yeah.
11 to 19
And we can know
is
that in
2
advance
minutes or
if we
something like
require
that.
the cards in before the
Yeah, I like the
before we
deadline.
begin, then we
Right.
can count them and we can say, there's 10 cards, so you get 3 minutes. They're not going to know before they come to the meeting, though.
But if
Yeah.
we put that when we publish the agenda, if we say, you know, for the following meeting, we may scale the time based upon the
Yes.
number of applications.
So they
or-
haven't, it
So they
could
know.
happen.
So they might have an A and a
Okay.
B and a C version of put your salient
Yeah.
points in first or something.
Yeah, okay.
We could do that. I'm for that.
But I think your point about pushing it to the end can lead to things that we don't want, you know, people talking about off-topic things for agendized items just so they can speak their time. I think if you give people the opportunity to speak their piece at the beginning, and because if you look at it, if we do, you know, depending how we break it up, if there's 20 people and you get 2 minutes each,
Yeah.
that's 40 minutes and we're done, you know, as opposed to 67 times 3 minutes, you know.
Right.
So if you have that scaling effect, then the chances of it going longer than an hour are pretty slim.
We could keep it to an hour most likely.
Whatever that is. If you have 1, 2, and a third tier scale, I'm fine with that.
I'm going to still push for the half hour at the beginning and the rest goes to the end, because this is what's being done at all the governing bodies, the meetings I attend. It works, and in fact, from almost all of them, after a couple of meetings, nobody speaks at the end anymore. They're fine with getting their key people in to speak in the first half hour and go home. And so they themselves will pare down how many people come and speak. And I think if you still allow an unlimited number of people speak at the beginning, you're still going to get the 20, 30, 50, 60 people who are going to come, even if they get a shorter amount of time. But when they know that only a certain number can get in the first half hour, they're going to pare themselves down. And that it has worked. And we can sit here and come up with all the potential ways that this is going to create problems, but it works. Like I said, I frequently walk into meetings with a certain script that I have to change at the last minute. You can. It's really not very hard. And if you're willing to come and speak at one of these meetings, you know you're passionate about it, you know your topic, you can cut it down from 3 to 2 to 1. It's not very hard. And usually you have time while other people are talking to sit there and, you know, do it on paper if you want. But I feel like this is the norm. This is the standard. This is what happens at all the meetings. It really works well. And I don't think we should come up with, you know, reasons that we think it could go wrong.
I mean, I hear your point, and I don't want to say I disagree, but the one thing that's concerning is I don't have any desire to try to wear people out. Like, I'd rather do the time management piece, and literally if it was part of the publishing was, you may get pared down to 15 seconds. If we limit it to 60 minutes or 45 minutes, I think that the time management piece can be accomplished by limiting the overall time, whatever that is. If we were to say that it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes, regardless of number of speakers, whatever it is, because it just kind of seems like a barricade thing, like, you know, we're going to wear people out by And I've seen this, because when I was in city, I remember when they moved the speakers to the end of the meeting. A lot of people couldn't stay up. They were old. They couldn't stay up that late. And there was kids who wanted to say something, and they couldn't get in because they had to go to school. And so it may work. I trust that it works, but I don't know that I like how it works, because it's just wearing people out. And it does seem like it's disparate treatment, because there will be some people who get there to get in early, and there's going to be others, and then that system gets questioned. Do we do a random draw? Do we have observers to pick whose cards go? It's just, I think that, in my opinion, if it's time management, that we just manage the time. And we can change it. Like if we do it for a couple of meetings and we say, listen, we got 50 speakers and they can't even get 2 words in because there's 50. I think if the intent is out there that we're looking to manage the time so we can conduct our business, I like the equity part of everyone gets to speak in the beginning and everyone gets an equal amount of time. And we're not pushing someone off. Because no matter how I've seen that done, someone is going to feel as though they were treated differently than the person who got to speak. That's my opinion. I mean, just.
So what does manage the time mean, though? Because, I guess I'm saying, like, how difficult is it to say we have 30 minutes for public comment, for for public comment?
Correct.
Things that aren't on the agenda?
That's fine.
Okay, so, and if we get 60 people, let's just hypothetically, 60 people are we choosing to extend those 30 minutes in the beginning? Is that, or stick to the 30 minutes and then they can finish their public comment after business is completed?
Yeah, I guess there's different ways to look at it. You could
Yeah.
push them to later so that they get whatever the allotted time is. And if you push them to the end, why would you restrict the time? Would we stay at 3 minutes if we did them at the end?
No.
So you'd still limit the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that if people can par it down, if you're aware that there's going to be a lot of speakers, to me, I like the term scaling, that if you have a certain, whatever our hard time is, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever that is, that you just divide it by the number of speakers you have and you put a deadline on when they put them in. If you say, listen, there's no more, when people come here by whatever time it is, 15 minutes into the meeting, whatever that number is, we cut off the receipt of those cards, and then we divide the public comment time by the number of speaker cards we have.
No, I think I would be in favor of not setting the time, 30 minutes or 60 minutes. The time is how much each person gets to speak. So if it's 1 to 10, you get 3 minutes. So
Okay.
if we have 10 speaker cards, each gets
Right.
30 minutes, and then we're done.
Got
If
it.
there's 11 people, they each get 2 minutes.
Right.
And so you're controlling the time by how much you're giving to each person. Right. You're not controlling the overall time that you're going to squeeze people through, because of there's 60 people and there's only and we're controlling 30 minutes. That's not going to work. That's going to be chaos. But I think if you do, what Trustee Wong was saying of 1 to 10 is 3 minutes, and then 11 to something else is a different time, and then moving up to
1 minute.
1 minute is, and I think there's not going to be 90 people here to speak for 1 minute, I don't think.
Well,
Watch,
the
I
most
just jinxed it,
seems
so.
that we've had on record is 61. Right.
I'm going to still advocate for what's been the norm around here. And I mean, this is how it's done in other meetings. And we're the outlier, and we would be if we continue to let an unlimited number of people speak, whether it's 1 minute or 2 minutes. It's still an unlimited number. We're still holding off staff before getting to our business. We're here for the business of the board, of the school district. I don't think asking for people to cut off public comment that's not related to our agenda a half an hour, I think that's plenty. None of our agenda items usually ever go over a half an hour. I think that's enough. And if more of you want to speak, we'll be here all night. But I think we need to prioritize our business and our agenda.
So the question is, how do you determine who goes first?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been done both ways, where it's first come, first served, and there's a person at the door, and you hand the card to them, and yeah, some people will come very early or whatever. I mean, that's going to happen. And there are boards that do draws. They have a stack of cards, they draw out as many as they can for the first half hour. And so, you know.
We have to decide, guys.
Well,
Okay,
You really
let
don't-
me just
we
say what
have
I
the
think,
discretion to do
we
Whatever we want.
know is we do want the cards to, no matter what, we want the cards to be collected before that agenda number, whether it's public comment or an agendized comment. Do we all agree on that?
So some type of a deadline
Once
to
it
cut them
starts.
Yes, as soon as it starts. So normally, I don't know what number that is for public comment. 8 point, so the cards must be in for public comment by
The
8.
start of 8.1.
Yeah, 8.1. And then any other comments people have for agendized items, same thing. They would need their cards in before that item on the agenda. Can we all
Those-
agree on that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's been the case. We very seldom get 10 cards after we're going. We'll get 3 or 4 that usually trickle up on a night when we get 27 cards. We'll get 2 or 3. So we'll get a little bit of result from that, a small amount. So I would agree with that. That's fine.
To me, that just tells us in advance how many people.
Correct. You have to have that to put a number.
Yeah, if we're going to
Yes.
limit time, then we need to know how many people.
Sure.
Okay, so we can agree on that. We like that. Okay. Then then we have 2 options. One is we limit, I still like Christie's idea either way. Let's talk about that then. Either way, 1 to 10 speakers is 3 minutes. 11 to 20 speakers is 2 minutes, and 20 plus 1 minute?
21 plus.
20, oh yeah,
21.
thank you. 21 plus 1 minute?
Yeah, and with the right to kind of reserve, we may have to adjust that down the road. But I agree with that.
Well,
Well,
I think all of this can be, I mean,
Yeah,
this
it's
isn't,
discretionary.
we're like a pilot, or we're flexible, right?
Yes.
So,
This
I'm
is
just
just-
trying to
Right.
get what we agree on.
I
So
agree
think
with-
even
I
if,
agree
whether
with
we
that.
do the 30 minutes or
Sure.
then I think we all agree on that.
Yep.
So we will know in advance, we have that. Okay, so those are the 2 things. We get the cards in advance. Depending on the number of cards, there's a time limit difference.
Right.
Okay? So then the last thing that we have to decide is, are we going to try the 30 minutes at the beginning and then finish at the end? Or are we going to just put everyone at the beginning and then limit the time? That's the one that we have to decide.
I would suggest, if we're going to pilot it, that we go with what we agree on and see what the results are after a couple of meetings.
And can I just point out mathematically, if you went
Yeah.
with what we just talked about, so if you had 10 speakers, 3 minutes each, that's 30 minutes.
Right.
If you had 20 speakers, 2 minutes each, so that's a maximum number for 2 minutes, that's 40 minutes.
Right.
If you went to 1 minute, you could have 30 speakers before you'd get past 30 minutes. So it still meets kind of the
30
30-minute-ish.
Right.
So really, your worst-case scenario, you have 40 minutes instead of 30.
Right.
So that's not, so you could go with just the 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then 21 plus, and still kind of meet the needs of
You're
a
gonna
limit
get
of
there.
30 minutes.
I mean,
Right.
so it takes a little longer because of the switching
true.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
that's true.
But I think we'll
But
be
not
within,
everybody
we'll be
speaks the
less than
limit
an
either.
hour
Right.
for sure. I mean, most likely. I
Well-
mean, we did have 67 one time.
But
so-
statistically, even on the nights when we have a lot, we're in the 20s.
Yeah.
We have cards that are in the high teens to mid-20s, according to the data that we have in front of us, So
The average over the last 2 years, just average, is 14.
Right. So if you hit the 20, at the 14, you're at 28 minutes. So the intent of the 30, Trustee Wong, we're meeting the intent without creating a scenario that might have, that I would see as maybe disparate, or maybe a management piece of selection and things. So we're getting everything.
So I think thinking about this as a pilot and thinking about which of these is the least restrictive, taking a phrase, President Bueno's way, or that way of going through everybody, is a less restrictive than forcing it to the end. So I'm really, I think they both have their merits. I like the idea that this is a standardized practice that other people are doing. I like the idea of people, clusters of people, getting behind certain people to present. But I also understand that there may be some people that are going to be waiting till the very end. So I think for me, I could be convinced otherwise, but I like the idea of doing a less change and scaling time and keeping the, cards have to be in,
Yeah.
and try that for several meetings. I don't know, 3 or 4, and see how it goes.
I mean, I just have to say, we're talking about staying to the end of our meeting like it's some kind of punishment. It's, it's in some ways, it's good for people who want to come speak to sit and see what we are really doing here. And because otherwise, a lot of the speakers think all we do is what's happening at public comment. They don't know the real meeting happens after that. And so in a way, it's not that bad sitting through the whole meeting.
I don't know. I would propose, it sounds like we're kind of here, we're beating the horse, but I understand why we are.
This is
I
really
would-
hard for us.
I would propose a motion that we, as discussed, I think Trustee Drew, and you captured it right here at the end, that we go with a trial of 3 to 4 meetings, and we do the tiering that Trustee Wong suggested. The tiering of, whatever, how it was explained, 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21, that we do that, and we use that as the trial date. And we have a cutoff time and all that will be put into our, when we publish the agenda for, we'll call it the next 3 or 4 meetings, however it works out on the calendar. Because I don't know if there's a break or something for the Thanksgiving or anything.
Maybe I'm being too nitpicky here, but I would suggest that we not set a time limit for our trial period, because we can change anything we do at any time.
Okay.
And maybe maybe this works for 4 months or 6 months, but then it doesn't after that. So I think what we decide today, that's the new protocol. And at the point that it doesn't work anymore for whatever reason, we can revisit
Right,
it.
and we could have 75 people that want to speak at the next meeting, and
Yeah.
we want to change it
And then we'll
immediately.
say, you're punished and have to stay to the
actually
end
gonna
of the meeting.
Or say something similar as Trustee
we'll
Wong,
say
like, I
Trustee
don't want to
Wong
put a
was
time
correct.
limit on this new practice.
Well, okay, on the motion, I will retract the part about the pilot. But what I would want to say is, we're not bound by it.
Right.
This is simply for purposes of announcement. By policy, we could change it at any time.
But-
We don't need this process. This was simply so that we would have a public discussion, so people understand the methodology behind it. So it's no restriction
As long
behind
as
it.
we give them a week or a meeting ahead notice, yes? Or maybe that doesn't matter.
You
but-
can, the board policy, the way it's described, we can govern it. Yeah, it's almost limitless. The reason I was saying 3 or 4 is simply so that the executive assistant understands that when we publish, that we'll do it, and that she gives a little feedback to Mr. Van Schack, and he says, hey, listen, we're doing it, and it's working. And we have the ability to just kind of look at it and say, is it working, what we're doing? And then we can adjust it on the fly. We don't need to come back to this and
So then let's take the 3 or 4 meetings out and just.
yeah, that was simply for just so we understand how long we're looking at it. But if it keeps working, you stick with it. So my motion would be the tiering. I'll retract the first one. My motion would be that we put the tiering in place as described. We have a deadline on the submission of the unagendized cards, and with the intent that we're looking to manage this timepiece,
Not agendized cards?
the non-agendized cards. These are non-agendized.
I think we should have that on all, even
Time limit
agendized.
also applies to agenda items.
The cards come in at that item before.
Oh,
that item on
in
the
terms of,
agenda.
but they're 2 separate things.
Yes.
There was no intent to limit the time on the agendized items. That wasn't part of the discussion, I didn't think, but.
So it sounds like 2 motions, or maybe it sounds like when we're speaking of for public comment, they all have to be submitted before public comment and the tiered time.
Correct.
That's one. And then the second thing is if it's an agenda item, they still need to submit their card before the agenda item, but we are not limiting their time.
Well, it's 3, it's currently 3 minutes. We reserve the right to, but
I
that,
think we should do the same thing.
Yeah,
So
because
that
some
if we
agenda
get-
items can get 60
If we get
speakers.
25
Oh.
cards, then
I'm not against that. That's at the flavor of you guys. I mean,
And obviously that doesn't happen very often, but like for the,
Nope.
in the IB case, right, that was an agendized item and there were a lot of speakers to that.
sure.
Yeah, consistency.
I think it can be
is-
the same. I
Yeah.
think it can be consistent.
Yep.
Okay.
But they're not part of the count for the public comment.
No.
Right.
Each one is its own.
They would
count.
be each packet their own.
Okay.
So
So
let's say.
I'll pull my motion, and I'm going to restate the motion. For purposes of comment on agendized and non-agendized items, there will be tiering in terms of the time allocation, 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21, and so forth, 3, 2, and 1. And that there'll be a deadline for submittal of those that'll be posted as part of the agenda. And that the board reserves the right to adjust this at any time without coming back on this board act.
I'm feeling some kind of way about that.
How's that?
Because if it's agenda, I mean, we haven't seen it yet. So maybe I'm just doing a what if scenario and we can change it at the time. But if it's an agenda item, that is board business. And I would hate to limit someone's speaking time because that is technically board business.
I just think that after 10, 20, 30 speakers, we don't need to hear a whole 33 minutes from each person.
Yeah, and it only happened that one time. So that's why I'm saying, yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll second.
And we have a second. So motion Bueno, second Druin. All right? Any questions on the motion? Did you capture it after we beat that thing up? Jeez. Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll, please.
Trustee Guzman.
I'm just making sure we go for I. It's the 3, 2, 1. They have to turn it in at the time for both. Okay. Okay.
That's the question. So the question's answered. Now, Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Trustee Guzman. I'm going to do it again.
Aye.
Trustee Druin.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Trustee Wong.
I vote aye to go along with the trial, but I still think we should do the 30 minutes at the beginning. But I will vote aye.
Okay, President Bueno.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
4 ayes and a reluctant aye.
And the one thing that I would relative to this, because there is the concern, I don't want to say it's on content, but it's on some of the speech. And I know it's just due diligence. I'm not looking for anything specific, but I would ask, and maybe there's a head nod or something, Mr. Van Schack, just if we could maybe get not a report or anything, but just we could check, with the Association of Superintendents or with our legal folks as to just kind of best practice and kind of where those guardrails are, because I know they move all the time. It would just, just to get some kind of a flavor as Ms. Wong, goes to other meetings and, hey, this is kind of best practice, that kind of what's best practice in terms of, I don't want to call it the content, but some of the speech.
Yeah, and I can certainly provide you, I've already done some work with sort of the legal guidelines. There are legal guidelines, and then there also is room decorum. And the board has a certain amount of flexibility in terms of determining room decorum that can be perhaps in some cases more restrictive than legal requirements if that's the nature of this board. But I'll provide something in writing to you.
Okay.
And then I think I'm also interested in practices in the, in the Bay Area or in the region regarding some of the other comments about, lighting and security and things like that. What are other people doing? Are they having similar problems? Are they, or similar challenges, and how are they addressing some of those or not addressing some of those? So I'd be curious to know, just again, so we're not making things up by our own, that we're trying to,
And I'll certainly provide some information in writing, but just for the sake of the public who's listening in, this is an issue at many, many school districts locally. And we as superintendents believe that our board members have become political theater. and that's intentional.
Mhm.
And that it's intended to distract and dissuade board members from doing the business that you're here to do. And it's a very common practice, both locally and really throughout the state, and different districts are dealing with it in different ways. But this sense that this has become a venue for people to voice political opinions outside of the impact that those have on students and schools has become very typical. And it's intentional, because it's a place where we are televised, and so you can get your 3 minutes and say whatever you want and get it on YouTube, and it becomes a forum that in districts where they don't televise board meetings, for example, public comment is much, much less, because they aren't being provided with an opportunity to engage in political theater. And I would say that I don't mean to detract from the value of public comment, but I will say that there's a ton of value in public comment, but there's also this additional layer of, this is an opportunity for me to put on a show, which we've certainly seen here.
Yeah. And some of the things I know we've talked about going back a couple of years, that maybe we could just look at feasibility. It's not everything. We don't want to, police state here, but some of the things, that are really easy, and the district's done a really good job on our campuses and even here with some of the surveillance stuff and lighting. I know that the lights were replaced, but, if there's some
We
things
can
like that, those are minor modifications that could help people be safer, not just feel safer.
100%, we could get, the lighting and the cameras, absolutely, 100% that's doable.
Right.
And that will give us some improvements, but it's really about, and I think even tonight, the decision to make the modifications will have some significant impacts, I believe.
And we are just saying, so folks know that might be watching, we're really fortunate to have the relationship we have with our police department, and they come on a moment's notice. Sometimes they're here and we don't know we know they're here, but the audience may not know that they're here. They're here. And sometimes you don't want to squelch speech, but you want folks, they're here. And so they're here quite often, and so there's never been a felt need to have private security or something, because we have Livermore's finest that come out, and they'll give as big of a presence as we need whenever it's needed. So, but it's for people to actually be safe as well as feeling safe. Okay.
Can we make sure that we get the new protocol out? But we have a month till our next meeting, but just make sure, I don't want anyone to say we didn't tell them.
Yeah, we'll just put it as part of the publish.
And I'll make sure we'll put it on the agenda, so that there'll be a little, an asterisk or something saying changes to meeting protocol, so that people are aware of it who read the agenda. So definitely we'll do that. And I appreciate the conversation among the board members. I think this is what you are here to do, is to make these kinds of decisions and have these kinds of conversations.
Thanks. All right. We're going to move into 11. Consent, we have 16 of them. 11.2 through 11.17, if it's anyone's pleasure to move them all in their entirety.
President Bueno, I move that we approve consent items 11.2 through 11.17 in their entirety.
Thank you, Trustee Prusso. Do you have a second?
Second.
Look at this decorum. We have a motion to move in their entirety by Trustee Prusso, and it's been seconded by Trustee Druin. Any question on the motion? Madam Clerk, if you'd call it.
Myself, aye. Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Trustee Druin.
Aye.
Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
President Bueno.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We have on the consent resos in section 12 here, we've got 1, 2, and 3. If we'd like to move those all together. All for
I move that we approve Resolution 001-2324 through 003-2324 in its entirety.
Thank you.
I'll second.
A motion by Wong, seconded by Prusso. Any questions? Madam Clerk?
Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Trustee Druin.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Trustee Wong.
Aye.
President Bueno.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. We didn't pull anything out. So we'll start with Trustee Wong on board member reports.
Well, since it was summer, I had a chance to go see some really great shows. I saw two plays at Spark, Silent Sky, Much Ado About Nothing, and they were great. And I also got to see the Oppenheimer movie, which is kind of a Livermore thing, and broke records at the Vine, so it was great. And I saw it twice on 70 millimeter. I was happy to be part of the new VP at LHS interviews, and I'm excited for Lisa Keck. Welcome her to our district. I attended an open house for Sheet Metal Workers 104's new apprenticeship training center. It's very cool out on Greenville Road. I attended with Teresa and others the webinar on the state budget, and was glad to see that the cuts weren't as much as we thought they were going to be. I attended with Superintendent Van Schack the Chamber of Commerce Wine Country Luncheon, and I'm excited for the district kickoff next week.
Thank you very much. Trustee Prusso.
I didn't see Oppenheimer yet. Thanks for inviting me. I don't really have much to report as far as school board stuff goes. I'm excited for the new school year to start, and I'm going to be taking my daughter to college next week, so we're having big feelings at our house.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Drone.
Well, as you may have heard, my family traveled abroad this summer, which was just an amazing experience to have. And I think one of the things that we visited with friends that live in Europe, and one of the things we ended up talking, what is school board? We had friends in Germany, they don't understand what school board was because in a lot of ways the federal government makes decisions, and those are the way it is. It's based on research. And so I think thinking about that and the way that things happen, but thinking about power and responsibility of local governance as one of the core tenets of our society is an interesting and pretty cool thing. And so I think that, this summer I reflected and recommitted to our collective responsibilities to do the best we can for our students here and to focus on the unique needs of Livermore, the assets and the challenges that it has. So I think that's one of the things that I thought this summer.
Thank you. Trustee Guzman.
Yes. I'd like to welcome everyone back to the upcoming 23-24 school year and reiterate my personal mission as a school board member. I believe that our focus is to serve our students academically, socially, mentally, etc. Our focus is to ensure that our students succeed and excel in their academics. And to do this, I believe that students must have their basic physical and psychological needs met. They must feel safe and secure when they walk onto any campus or facility operated by the school district or an event sponsored by the school district. My ask from every community member is to help us in accomplishing this. Help us to ensure that each child is safe. Help us ensure that each child feels welcome and secure. This is foundational. As a board member, I will continue to support our teachers, our administrators, staff, families, and especially our students in meeting and exceeding their academic goals: reading, writing, math, science, world languages, sports, etc. Because my goal is that I want every child, when they leave Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District, with the ability to say two things. First and foremost, that LVJUSD gave them the skills, knowledge, and tools needed to succeed in the real world, or AKA adulting. And two, that they felt seen and heard during their time at Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District. This is my goal, and this is what I will work towards in this upcoming academic year and future years. So my final thoughts are, let's do this, and let's do it together.
Thank you. Looking forward to the new year coming. Hoping everyone makes it back safely. And it's going to be a good school year. I know we've got a real good plan in place. We talk about decorum here and all those type of things. There's some things that are beyond our control. But I can assure the public that from a managerial standpoint, from our administration, from Mr. Van Schack, and going through the team that he has put together, The goal is, as Trustee Guzman said here, it's to educate these kids and give them the best opportunity. I've been on this board for 9 years, and I can assure you it's always been that way. We've got great leadership in our locals, and sometimes we get a little distracted. Sometimes there's just things you cannot control. We do our best to kind of do it. You saw us talk for 30 minutes tonight about just trying to manage a little bit of time, things like that. But people are here to do the right thing, and there's a plan in place, and it's an ever-changing plan to do really good for our kids. And so it's kind of an exciting time as we finish up some bond stuff with our facilities and doing some things like that. There's a lot of good things on the horizon for Livermore kids, and they're already improving. So that's it. Mr. Van Schack.
Thank you. This will be my 35th year in education, and August always brings with it a wave of emotions, excitement about the new year. It's like a new season in sports, and you go in with a ton of optimism, and this is going to be our championship year, but also a little bit of sadness. You know, July is a fun month for educators, and sad to see the last year sort of officially come to an end. August is great for us. We bring our leadership team back together, and we discuss student achievement data, develop plans to make improvements. Tomorrow we begin with the ILTs coming together, about 200. We'll gather in the student union over at Granada High School, and again, their task is to review student achievement data and develop plans, you know, to see our students succeed at a higher level each year. We have our 13,000 students coming back in about a week, 2 weeks. The class of 2024 will be beginning their final year of high school, and the class of 2037 will be just starting off. And that's always a number that brings pause, but we have almost 450 TK students beginning this year, which is a record number for us, and we're excited about that. Fall sports teams are preparing for their first contests of the year, following what was really a historically successful year last year in terms of state champions and the high level of success. And so that'll be a tough follow, but we're really optimistic about what the year will bring us. This will be the first year of girls flag football. We're adding that to the fall lineup, which includes girls tennis and golf, and boys and girls water polo, and cross country and football and cheer and dance and volleyball. So a lot of our kids are out there getting after it already, and so we're really excited about that. And at our next meeting, we will be introduced to our 2 newest members of the board, representatives from Granada and Livermore High School, who will have an interesting perspective, and we look forward to that. So I think there's a wave of optimism in the air. I loved the conversation tonight, and I know it's been a challenge for us in dealing with some of what we've been dealing with, but I know that the community is ever so appreciative of the diligence that our board has shown in making sure that students stay front and center. So happy to be back.
Appreciate it. And just a little side note, not even a last word, but some people may question, and I've heard people on the female flag football, the participation is huge, huge. When they walked out the first day, I said, "What is it, like cross country, track and field?" There over 50 young gals were coming out to. I mean, huge participation first year. So it's gonna be exciting to watch. No further business. Adjourn 2108. Hot mics.